There is a particular kind of silence that follows a phone call that ended too quickly, a visit that was cut short, a conversation where you could feel, without a single word being spoken, that you were too much. You have felt it, and you have probably told yourself it was nothing, that you were imagining it, that they are busy and life is complicated. But somewhere underneath all of that, you already know what is true, and you deserve to finally hear someone say it out loud. Emotional setup. There are evenings when the house settles into a quiet that feels different from peace. The television is on, but you are not really watching it. Your phone is nearby, it always is, but it has not made a sound in hours. There is a chair at your table that used to be filled with noise, with argument, with laughter, and now it just sits. You remember when your children needed you so completely that you could not get a moment alone, and now, somehow, without anyone meaning for it to happen, the situation has reversed in a way that no one prepared you for. You know this feeling, the one that arrives when you ask a small favor and sense that it is an inconvenience. When you call and the conversation wraps up too fast. When you mention something that matters to you and watch the eyes across the table go somewhere else. Nobody around you sees it, but you do. You carry it carefully, privately, because you do not want to be difficult. You do not want to confirm what you are afraid they already think. But carrying it alone, in silence, for this long, that has a cost. And today, it is time to talk about it honestly. Credibility bridge. Those who study human connection, counselors, family therapists, and those who have spent decades sitting beside aging men and women in the last chapters of their lives, all say the same thing. The wound that comes from feeling unseen by the people you raised is unlike any other. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is so quiet. It asks nothing of anyone around you, and yet it slowly reshapes how you see yourself. The people who have come through this, who have reclaimed their sense of worth, their peace, their dignity, did so by understanding a small number of things very clearly. And that is why what you are about to hear matters more than you realize. We will get to point 5 in a moment, and I want you to pay very close attention when we do, because it is the one that most people dismiss the first time they hear it, and it is the one that quietly changes everything. Core content. Now we discuss about 5 points. Point 1. The pain you have been minimizing is real, and it deserves to be named. Most parents who carry this kind of hurt spend enormous energy arguing themselves out of it. You tell yourself they are tired, they are under pressure, they are raising their own children now, and life is different. And some of that is true. But truth can coexist with hurt, and one does not cancel the other. What you are feeling, that quiet sense of being tolerated rather than cherished, managed rather than loved, is not a weakness. It is not ingratitude. It is a genuine wound that has been given no room to breathe. There was a woman named Eleanor, 71 years old, who had not told a single person that she dreaded Sunday afternoons. That was when her daughter usually called, briefly, distracted, already halfway out the door to something else by the end of the second minute. Eleanor would hang up and sit for a while in the kitchen, unable to name exactly why she felt worse after the call than before it. She had convinced herself that this was simply what getting older meant, that the closeness she remembered was something that belonged to a different season of life. The cost of that silence was that Eleanor began, slowly, to believe what she feared her daughter already thought, that she was someone to be managed, that her feelings were a problem, that the right thing to do was to want less, need less, and never mention any of it. What you believe about yourself in those quiet moments matters enormously, and it cannot be corrected until it is first acknowledged. The first thing you must do is stop arguing your own pain out of existence. And we have not even reached the point that most people resist the hardest, the one that, when they finally accept it, changes the relationship more than anything else. That comes next. Point 2. Your children may not know what they are doing, and that changes how you respond. There is something that counselors who work with aging families say repeatedly, and it is worth sitting with. In the vast majority of cases, adult children who make their parents feel like a burden are not doing so deliberately. They are not cruel. They are distracted, overwhelmed, carrying their own private weight, and they have simply never been told what their behavior feels like from where you are standing. The distance between intent and impact in families is often enormous, and it goes both ways. A man named Robert, 68 years old, spent 4 years growing quietly more withdrawn from his son, assuming from the short visits and the half-present conversations that his son simply did not want to be close anymore. He said nothing. His son, meanwhile, was fighting a private anxiety about not doing enough, not knowing what to say, not knowing how to bridge the distance that had grown between them, and interpreting his father's silence as a sign that everything was fine. Neither of them was wrong exactly. Both of them were suffering, and the space between them was filled entirely with assumptions that neither had ever spoken out loud. That silence is the real cost, not the original distance, but the years it goes unnamed. If there is even a possibility that your child does not fully understand the impact of their behavior, you still have a door available to you. It is uncomfortable to walk through, but it is open. But here is something I want you to sit with for a moment before we continue. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever told them? Not hinted, not hoped they would notice, but told them clearly, calmly, in plain words what you need and how you have been feeling, because what you have never said cannot be heard. Point 3. Performing happiness you do not feel is slowly costing you more than you know. There is a particular habit that many parents fall into, often without realizing it. The habit of managing the feelings of everyone in the room while quietly setting aside their own. You say you are fine when you are not. You laugh at a gathering where you feel invisible. You thank them for the brief visit without mentioning that it left you lonelier than before they came. You do this because you love them, and because you do not want to be a burden. But here is the painful irony. Performing peace you do not feel teaches everyone around you that there are no consequences to how they treat you. A woman named Miriam, 74 years old, had smiled her way through 3 years of family gatherings where she sat at the edge of every conversation, included in the room but not in the actual life being lived inside it. She was so skilled at appearing content that when she finally told her son how she had been feeling, his first response was genuine shock. He had no idea, not because he was indifferent, but because she had never allowed him to see. The face you show the world teaches the world how to see you. When you consistently appear as though you need nothing, people stop offering anything. This is not because they do not care. It is because you have made it impossible for them to know what caring would look like. Quiet dignity is not the same as silence. You are allowed to be honest about what you need. In fact, your willingness to speak the truth gently and clearly is one of the most important things you can offer the relationship. Point 4. Rebuilding your own life is not giving up. It is reclaiming what was always yours. There comes a point in many parents' lives where, quietly and without anyone noticing, they stopped having a life of their own. Not out of weakness, but out of years of giving to children, to a household, to a marriage, to a community. And when those roles began to shrink, when the house grew quiet and the calls grew shorter, there was simply nothing left standing in the space that was vacated. The emptiness that followed was real, but it was not inevitable. A man named Thomas, 72, had not had a true friendship of his own, one that existed entirely separately from his family, in over a decade. His daily life had contracted to his home, his routines, and waiting for moments of connection that arrived less and less. When a neighbor invited him to a woodworking group at the local community center, he almost declined. He went once, then again. Within a few months he had conversations every week that had nothing to do with his children, his loneliness, or his age. Something shifted in him, not dramatically, but in the way that quiet, real things shift. And his children noticed without being told anything. When your happiness does not rest entirely on whether your children call, the dynamic between you changes. You become once again a person with a life, not a parent waiting for acknowledgement. That fullness is not a strategy. It is simply what a life is supposed to look like. Nobody is going to say this to your face, so I will. You are allowed to want more from your life than your children's approval. You always were. Point 5. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back, and this takes more courage than staying. This is the point that many people hear and immediately resist. because it sounds at first like giving up, like abandonment in reverse. But there is a difference, a real and important one, between withdrawing in anger and creating distance with love and intention. When a relationship has become one where your presence is tolerated and your feelings are invisible, continuing to make yourself fully available does not help the relationship. It teaches the other person that nothing needs to change. A woman named Helen, 69 years old, had called her daughter every single week for 2 years. Always the one to reach out, always the one to apologize if the conversation felt awkward, always the one to smooth the silences over. When she stopped for 1 month without explanation or drama, simply because she had finally run out of the energy it took to pretend everything was fine, her daughter called her. For the first time in longer than Helen could easily remember, her daughter asked how she was, and then waited, quietly, for the actual answer. Distance chosen with love is not the same as abandonment. It is the act of respecting yourself enough to stop accepting less than what a relationship between two people should hold. It creates a space where the other person must decide, for themselves, what they want to fill it with. That is not cruelty, that is honesty. You do not have to disappear, you do not have to issue ultimatums. You simply have to stop organizing your life entirely around waiting for someone to show up in the way you deserve. What comes next is the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. Do not skip it. If you have stayed with me this far, what comes next was written for you specifically, because what I am about to say is the thing that nobody in your life is likely to say to your face. Deep reflection segment. Time has a way of passing that we only truly understand in hindsight. You look at a photograph, a family gathering, a holiday meal, a face that was young and is no longer, and the years between then and now seem to compress into something almost weightless. And yet every one of those years was full of ordinary mornings, of worrying, of waiting, of giving, of building something that felt in the moments when it was happening, like it would last forever in exactly that form. Nothing lasts forever in exactly that form. The house that was full grows quiet. The people who needed you most are now so far inside their own lives that the distance between you can feel on certain evenings like a physical space. You have photographs. You have memories that are more vivid than anything happening in front of you right now. And you have a question, one that does not always form itself into words, but is there nonetheless, whether any of it, all of it, the years of sacrifice and love and presence, was truly seen. You were seen, maybe not by the right people in the right moments, in the way you needed, but the love you gave was real, and real things do not disappear. They become part of the people they were given to, whether those people know it yet or not. And you, the person who is still here, still feeling, still carrying all of this with a quiet dignity, you are still worth every moment of the life that remains. Empowerment shift. There is a form of wisdom that only comes through having lived long enough to know what truly matters. Not the wisdom that comes from books or advice, the kind that comes from having loved people across decades, from having lost things you could not replace, from having kept going on the mornings when keeping going felt impossible. You have that wisdom. It is not a small thing. It is, in fact, one of the most important things a human being can carry. What changes when you know the 5 things in this video is not the behavior of your children, at least not immediately. What changes is how you carry yourself inside the relationship. You stop waiting to be given permission to matter. You stop apologizing for having feelings that are entirely reasonable. You stop measuring your worth by whether a phone rings on a Saturday afternoon. And when you stop doing those things, when you reclaim the quiet authority of a person who knows their own value, something in the space between you and the people you love begins, slowly, to shift. Not because you demanded it, but because you stopped pretending it didn't need to. The final thought, and the words I want to leave you with before this video ends, are the reason I made it. Stay with me just a little longer. Final closing. There is that silence again, the kind you know. The kind that settles into a room on an ordinary evening and asks you, without words, what you are going to do with the time that remains. You came to this video carrying something. maybe a specific memory, maybe a feeling that had been sitting with you for longer than you wanted to admit. And I genuinely hope, that some part of what was said here gave that feeling a little more room to breathe. You are not too much. You are not an inconvenience, a task, a problem to be managed at a distance. You are a person who has loved deeply and lived fully and is still here, still willing, still deserving of the same dignity you gave so freely to others. The years ahead of you are not a footnote. They belong to you. And the way you spend them, the way you choose to see yourself inside the relationships that matter most, that choice is still yours to make. Take care of yourself, because time never waits. Call to action. If something in this video touched you, if it reminded you of something you have been quietly carrying, then share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you would like to continue this conversation, there is another video waiting for you that speaks to what happens when your children choose their spouse's family over yours, and how to find peace with that. I will see you there.